We are live. Good evening, everybody. This is another episode of Limitless. Um, Welcome. This is episode, I don't know what number, but this is one that I'm really excited about. Tonight's episode is all about identity shift. It's really how do we become the person we need to be able to live our dream, our passion, our goals that we have in life. I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's cold in Johannesburg. We're mid-November or towards the end of November. It's supposed to be nice and warm outside, but I'm freezing. So I'm really dressed up for this cold weather. If you're in South Africa, then I guess you know. Um, Joburg, it's freezing. The rest of the country seems to be nice and warm. Tonight's episode is really one that, how do I put this? I absolutely loved preparing because as I was preparing this one, so many realities just popped up in my own life and I couldn't stop preparing. So I've got quite a full little bit of a talk for everybody tonight. It is limitless, so let's go limitless. Tonight specifically is about identity and your identity shift and how to create a phenomenal identity shift. We're going to unpack a couple of things about it. Firstly, we'll talk about what I would call the identity trap, because we do find ourselves occasionally in the identity trap. So we'll unpack that a little bit. We'll talk about understanding the fundamentals about your identity. Because if you don't really understand the fundamentals, it's going to be difficult to understand what I'm going to explain afterwards. Then we'll go to what I call the identity shift framework. It's more the how. How do I bring that shift to reality? What's required? What are the steps that I need to take? We'll jump in and just talk about some of the obstructions or I don't want to say self-sabotage. To a certain extent, it is self-sabotage, but resistance you're gonna have in yourself when you start creating an identity shift. And then we're going to look at real practical tools, usable tools that you can apply to bring about a magnificent identity shift. And then last but not least, probably the most important, we're going to look at a 30-day plan, not a detailed plan, a summarized plan, but what can I do over the next 30 days to really bring about a full manifestation of the identity shift that we're going to talk about? So I trust you all have a deep understanding what identity is. If you don't, I'll give you a quick brief. So as humans, we're basically made up, or our identity is made up of two core components. And the one component is my value system. It's values that I grew up with, values that I've developed, the things in life I value, activities I value, interactions I value, the things that bring me joy, happiness, and a sense of satisfaction and purpose in life. Next to my values, we have beliefs, and my beliefs are, oh man, there's so many beliefs about myself, about the world around me, where I stay, the people in my life, my skills, my talents, my abilities. There's millions of things that's in my beliefs. So when I take my values and my beliefs and I merge these two, it creates basically an identity. So a lot of us live, well, not a lot of us, all of us, we basically live according to our identity. But tonight, I mean, this is limitless. So we've got to really ask the questions, what takes me to another level? And one of the things that we often think takes us to the next level is, we set goals, we build strategies. That's a lot of the stuff that I teach about. And very often we find ourselves running in circles and we're not really fully achieving, what we're dreaming of. So tonight I want to put in a little bit of a curveball and just ask a statement. What if, what if I told you that the biggest obstacle between you and your dreams, the biggest obstacle between you and your dreams isn't your circumstances. It's not your resources. It's not even your skills, your capabilities, or your talents. To a large extent, the secret very often lies in who you think you are. Not in a negative way. Who do you think you are? Really, who do you think you are? So, a lot of people believe that your identity is cast in stone, and if this is my identity today, it will be my identity forever. So, I'm going to make a statement. Your identity is not your destiny. Your identity is a starting point. What we need to grasp is the person that we are today. It is my identity that has brought me to this point. But the person that will get me to where I need to be is not the same person that got me to this point. That's got to sink in a little bit. Who you are right now, if I would define that person, then I would define your identity. So it is your identity that has brought you from where you were through life to this point. So in this point, one can say, not completely, but to a large extent, this is my identity. What we need to realize is that there is a future. There's a different reality awaiting. And the person required to manifest that is not the person that you've wrapped in your current identity. Very often, we need to upgrade the identity to become and experience the life that's waiting for us. So, the reason I say that is there's a huge amount of people that are trying really hard to achieve goals. But these goals are misaligned with their current identity. So, to give an example, there's a lot of people that have millionaire goals, but they have a broke person identity. They have goals that are wrapped in confidence, but they've got insecure personal beliefs. So, for me to achieve really where I want to go, we need to understand that there's a shift required in your identity. I really, really hope that penny is kind of dropping and that everybody is on the same mindset as me. In other words, we don't attract what we want, we attract who we are. We attract what we are. And if who and what we are is not aligned with what we want, what we'll be getting is the same of who we are. So very often, I mean, we've heard this being said a million times, you cannot repeat the same action and expect a different result or a different outcome. In the same sense, if we are not prepared to shift who we are in our identity, we cannot expect the type of results that we are hoping for, wishing for, that is not necessarily aligned with who we are at that time and frame. So for me to develop into an upgraded results life, I need to upgrade my core. I need to upgrade my identity. And tonight we're going to unpack, in essence, how do I do that? So I'm going to show you how to consciously design and step into the identity of the person who already has what you want. Can I say that again? I'm going to show you guys how to consciously design and step into the identity of the person who already has what you want. Now, this is not a question of fake it until you make it. It is about become it until you achieve it. So I want to change that statement, fake it until you make it, become it until you achieve it. So stay with me. I'm going to give you guys the whole process. I'll tell you about the trap. I'll make you understand the fundamentals of identity. I'll teach you guys, and I make some notes so I can. I made my notes. These are my notes, by the way. Very, very rough notes. I'll teach you the how to create that identity shift. I'll give you some warnings about what are some of the resistance that you can experience. I'll give you the practical tools, and then I'll unpack a 30-day plan for everybody to really become the person that you know you can become. So let's start off with the identity trap, and let's figure out how to bridge that. So we need to understand that our current identity, where does it come from? It doesn't fall out of the sky, and it does not come from my future. My current identity is formed by my past experiences. So from the day that I was born up until this moment, that was the creating force, if you will, of my current identity. My future is not creating unless I actively apply what I'm going to teach you guys tonight. My future does not exist yet. I'm not in tomorrow. I'm not in next year. I'm not in 5 years from now. So my future does not have an impact on my current reality. I do have hopes and dreams and aspirations into my future, but there's nothing in my future that is actively playing into my values nor my beliefs. Everything that is behind me is playing into my values and my beliefs. And here's my challenge with that. If we accept the current identity only, then we have to realize that we are nothing else but a result of our own history, and we are not stepping into our true destiny. Then there's a huge difference between those. Because I'll be honest, my identity, how do I put this? It's almost as if I am constantly running on outdated software. So if my identity is merely shaped by everything in my past up until this moment, then it means that the magnificent me, the limitless me, the phenomenal me, the incredible me doesn't have the power to step into my true destiny, doesn't have the power to create a magnificent future. So I don't want to say that I'm casting my identity, but I do want you guys to understand your identity is almost like a thermostat. It will always bring you back to your set point. So if there's a specific point in your life that you say, this is my identity, everything around you will always bring you back to that point. If you someone that's constantly earning, let's say, 20,000 Rand a month, if that's your identity, it doesn't matter how hard you work, what your aspirations or dreams are, the moment you go from 20,000 to 30 or 40 or 50,000, somehow you'll tend to sabotage yourself and come back to 20. It's almost as if your identity will just keep you in check. It's your thermostat, it's your barometer, it's your guide that keeps you in this place. If you're someone that's always single, if your identity is that you are single, you'll find that you self-sabotage any potential healthy relationship. It's in their identity. So your identity is a critical part, and what it does, it creates a loop. So I just want to explain that loop to you guys quickly. So my identity, and I teach this very often. I often talk about it. It's my identity that shapes my internal dialogue, or what we also call my thoughts. So I absolutely need my identity. That's the soil in which my thoughts grow. Now, all my thoughts are the elements that create all my decisions in life. And my decisions always manifest and drive my behaviors and my actions. My actions and my behavior is the bridge between my internal realm and the external world. And there's always feedback. So there's a result. So when I do something, I behave in a certain way. I'm creating a bridge between my internal thought process and decisions and the external manifestation of that. And something always comes back over the bridge. We call that feedback, we call that results. Now, here's what's interesting. Where does that feedback go? That feedback feeds back into my identity. So I've got a loop process. I've got identity, thoughts, choices, behavior, feedback, identity. There's a whole loop. So unless something shifts in my identity, my thoughts are not going to change, my choices are not going to change, my behavior is not going to change, I'm not going to get different results in life. So the best way, or one of the greatest ways, is to shift that identity. It's one of the most difficult things. It's one of the things that no one else in the world can change for you. I can teach you how to think differently, and even in conversations, I can shift the way you think. I can help you and influence you to make different choices, even and decisions. I can teach you different behavioral patterns. I can teach you how to reframe the feedback you get. But the identity you hold onto, only you can change it. It's in your hands. You are the only person. You are the only person that can shift your identity. So let's look at identity. Let's just understand identity. So firstly, identity is is not really who you are. Your identity is who you believe you are, and there's a difference. And your beliefs can change, which means your identity can be transformed. Your identity is not who you are. You are not cast in stone. So to understand this a little bit deeper, let's just take identity and just break it up a little bit because there's basically different layers to identity. The first layer, let's call it the surface identity. That's basically who you would describe yourself. So what you do, your job, your career. In my case, I'm a trainer, I'm a speaker. What do I do? My roles in life, I'm a husband, I'm a parent, I'm a mentor. What are my activities? My sports, my affiliations, where I go for relaxation, where do I do shopping. These are all the elements that define my surface identity. Then I've got what's called a social identity. And social identity is more how other people see me. So, what is my reputation? What is the opinion of all the students and the people I interact with of me? What is the image that I have created? If you go onto my social media platforms, what are the comments, the social proof that is out there about me? That's created my social identity. So we've got a surface identity is what I do, is my job and the roles and activities in life. We've got a social identity, is my reputation, the image, how other people see me. And then I've got a core identity, and this is the critical one. The core identity is who you believe you are at your essence. In other words, the absolute self concept, the values and the beliefs you've wrapped around yourself and that you've created your persona around. That's your core identity. And that's the one that we are talking about. So why why do most people in life, and we meet so many people that are stuck? I mean, the one conversation we often have is people that are stuck. So why are they stuck? Well, they try and change the results they're getting in life. They try and get different outcomes in their behavioral patterns, in their interactions, in the relationships, in their careers, in the work and everything they do without changing their identity. So they focus a lot on doing different things. I need you guys to get this one. This is gonna be a nugget statement, a wisdom bomb. They focus on doing different things instead of being a different person. If I am who I am at my core, if my values and my beliefs don't shift, my actions will always tend to bring me the same result because they are birthed in the same womb, and the womb is my identity. So, and we fall in this trap. We try and do different things and we try and do things differently. instead of realizing I need to become a different person. I need to have that internal upgrade for me to get different external results. It's the same way if you look at a computer, if you've got a program installed and it's a very old program, it doesn't matter how fast you type, the results you're going to get will always be consistent on the same level. You're not going to get upgraded results because your program has stayed the same. So it's useless us trying to attempt different behaviors without shifting our internal core beliefs about ourselves. So the result of that often is very frustrating because the behavioral change is very often just temporary. It's short term. But what we need to realize is once I have an identity shift, my results are permanent. So behavioral change or change in my behavior brings temporary results where identity shift can bring permanent results. And that's probably the biggest takeaway that I really need you guys to grab. So when we change who we are, what we do automatically follows. When I change the core of who I am, my core behavioral programs and types of behavior, my default, my habitual behaviors shift. So let's take a couple of steps back. Where does my core identity come from? What is the, let's call it the power of creation of my identity? First thing we need to obviously realize is one of the biggest influences on my identity, because remember, one of the elements is my values, is my childhood experiences, and I want to call it programming. Let's call it upbringing. Let's be nice. Let's be politically correct and not call it my childhood programming. Let's call it my childhood upbringing. But it's that childhood experiences, especially the first 7 years of our life. It doesn't sort of cast my personality in stone, but it does have a massive influence on my life unless I deliberately bring in a pattern interrupt. The second element that's critical to understand what shapes my identity is habits and repeated patterns. When we repeat certain things, because of that repetition, it seeps into our deep belief systems and it shapes and becomes part of our identity. Third element is what we call social conditioning or social feedback. So when I interact with other people, the kind of responses, reactions that I get from other people, that also has a massive influence on my identity. Number four is my greatest achievements I've had in my past. And let's bring in my greatest failures I've had in my past. All my past successes, achievements, and failures and disasters, all of those are authors of my identity. And the fifth one, which is probably the most powerful, are the stories I've told myself about myself. We all tell ourselves stories about ourselves, and very often we tend to repeat those stories. Those five elements are the authors of your identity. Now, here's my question. Would you want your past, external conditions, feedback, other people's opinions, and the stories you tell yourself that don't serve you, would you want those to be the author of your identity, or are you ready to take control? Because what we need to realize is your identity that you probably carry with you right now wasn't consciously chosen. It was unconsciously collected. My identity I have, for most people, the identity you have right now is an unconscious collection of factors, feedback, conditioning, patterns, habits, programming, successes, failures, and stories that you've collected in your life up until this moment. And without you realizing it, it's become the author of your identity. Are you ready to get to a point where you can consciously create a better identity? So I hope you guys are excited because now we're going to go into why you want to do it and how you're going to do it, because that's the critical part. So, firstly, let's go into the why. So, what happens when my identity and my goals I have in life are perfectly aligned? And this is the reason you want to do this. Because everything you do, all your behaviors and your actions, starts to feel very natural and less effort is put it's effortless. That's the word I'm looking for. It becomes very natural and effortless. Motivation becomes a non-requirement. Motivation is something that tends to just fall out of the sky and manifest magically. Um, it becomes automatic. Obstacles are not seen as massive obstacles. Panic doesn't kick in because of the obstacles. Obstacles become opportunities and experiences and adventures. And the best reason you want to do that is quite simply success becomes inevitable. Can I say that again? Success becomes inevitable. That's when they're aligned. What happens when they're not aligned? Self-sabotage becomes inevitable. Motivation requires constant willpower or sources from the outside in. Success feels extremely uncomfortable, and you're constantly, that's a tongue twister for me. You are constantly, unconsciously creating failure. So let's shift that identity. So, how do we start? Where do we start? We start off by defining who are you now? Who are you now? Now, here's what we need to understand. You cannot change. I've just clicked on the button here and I think I've closed my screen. Let me check is my screen still open? Am I still here? Can you guys still see me? Oh, I haven't closed it. All right. Sometimes I press the wrong buttons and everything just gone. All right. How do I change this? What are the actual steps? I need to start off with who am I now? Who are you right now? So I call this the audit. It's an identity audit. And what we need to realize why this audit is so critical is because when it comes to identity, we cannot change what we don't acknowledge. I have to have awareness and acknowledgement. That's absolutely the first step. That's the first step to becoming who you need to be by being brutally honest about who you are right now. So if you want to become a better version, magnificent version of the future you, the first step you need to do is, all right, well, who am I now? So there's 5 questions I need to ask about. You've got to really, really sit down. And this is your audit questions. So question number 1, how do I currently see myself? And you can write that question down because this is part of your audit. This is your process, how to bring that shift. How do you see yourself now? And you want to write down at least 10 different statements. So And don't go so simplistic. I mean, my name is Dion Groenewald. I'm a male. I'm 62. And if someone says, "How do I see myself now?" I can go very superficial, and I can go, "Well, I'm a male. I'm 62," and I can just make superficial statements. No, no, no. How do you see yourself currently? Go look in the mirror and ask yourself, "What do you see? Who do you see?" First thing that pops into my own mind, I see a father. Um, I see. I see a man that takes accountability to uplift and train thousands of people around him. Um, and I can go through that list. So I can go very, very deep. Go deep, go very authentic, and go very, very, very real about yourself. First question, how do you currently see yourself? Second questions, this is the one some of you guys are not going to like, but you got to ask this question to yourself. What are the stories you tell about yourself? In other words, what are those narratives? If you had to write a movie about yourself, what are the narratives that is going to be dominant, and what is that character going to look like? What are the stories you tell about yourself? What are the stories you tell about yourself? Question number three. What do you believe is possible for a person like you? What do you believe is possible for someone like you? Now, the reason you want to ask that question is for one main purpose. Our beliefs and what we believe about ourselves and what beliefs about possibilities we have about ourselves creates a ceiling. So the moment I am prepared to really go and look down and say, okay, who am I? How do I see myself? What are the stories I tell about myself? And what do I believe is possible for someone like me? What am I doing here? I am understanding where my ceiling is. If I don't know where my ceiling is, how do I know where to go to break through it? If I think my ceiling is up there, I might operate around here. I need to know where my ceiling is. And the only way I can know where it is by being brutally honest and ask myself, what do I believe is possible for someone like me? Question number four. How do I talk about myself to others? When you are in conversations, and very, very often, not strangers, most often, people that are very close to you, your inner circle, when you talk to them, how do you talk about yourself? What are the words you use to describe yourself? But the critical part here is what are the words you use repeatedly when you describe yourself? So very often, and I found myself there, I'll very often try and be humble. And I come up with all these humble words, I'm the servant, and what we don't realize is by creating these patterns, we are the authors of our identity. So I need to know, for me to change, I need to know who I am. I need to know what is it that I'm writing, what is that book I'm writing about my identity. And the only way I will know that is really by listening to my own words when I speak to people I love. And the last one, what evidence do I use to support my current identity? And I call it evidence. Sometimes I want to use false evidence and I want to use excuses. I'll give you guys an idea. One of the things I picked up in my own identity a while back was I struggled to believe in my core identity. So this is a values thing and a belief element that I actually have a impact, massive impact on people's lives. And I started looking at some social proof, feedback that people have given me over the years, and it's over a long time frame. And I've shared a lot of the feedback on a lot of my platforms, but something in me didn't want to believe it. So what my brain did is my brain said, yes, I've got one person that gave me voluntary feedback, but I helped 50. So it's only one out of 50. So I'm not really helping a lot of people. So what my brain did, it came up with the story that the only people I help are those that actually voluntarily give me feedback. The others I don't really help. So it created a false form of proof because look, 49 people are not giving me feedback. Created a false form of proof to justify my identity. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So let's look at the proof and look at what are you using to support. I'll give you some kind of idea of some patterns, and some of them come from me. You might recognize some of them. One of them is I'm not a morning person. And I actually had this conversation with someone in less than a week ago. So I'm not a morning person. You know, in fact, on one of these platforms, I actually spoke about it. I'm now in that stage of life where I like to wake up a little bit later and, chillax throughout the day. And after the talk, I went and I started preparing this. I went, I wonder if that's an identity statement. And I realized it actually is. I'm creating my own identity. Second one that I often hear is people, and speak this over themselves. I'm not good with money. Oh my goodness, how many times have you heard that? How many times does that come out of your own mouth? Or people will say, I can't keep money. I can make money, but I can't keep it. I spend money frivolously. I spend it quite easily. Third one that I giggle at very often is when people say, I'm not a natural leader. Hey, we all are actually. But if you're going to attach that statement to your identity, guess what's going to happen? Your identity will manifest. You'll get what you claim. A typical state. I'm not that type of person. I'm not someone that does. Um, I'm not someone that can get up onto a platform and talk and speak eloquently to a large crowd. Hmm. I hear that often. I can speak one on one, but the moment there's an audience, then I'm not that person. No, what we are doing is we are framing an identity through that statement. It's time to change. So every time I say I'm not that kind of a person, I'm strengthening the prison that I've created for myself. My identity statements are either expanding possibilities in my world or they are contracting. The statements I verbalize about my identity is either multiplying possibilities or diminishing possibilities. So for me to go do a self-audit about what comes out of my mouth and how I see myself, what are the stories I tell myself, what I believe about myself, is without a doubt absolute starting point to create your magnificent, real future identity. So how do we do it? How do we do it? What do you need to really do to create that magnificent identity, to make it manifest so it brings results? We start with in the process. Step one, do the self-audit, as I've just explained. Step two, who do you need to become? Who do you need to become? So go sit down. If you got to switch the lights off, light a candle, if you sit outside in the sun, whatever you need to do, go allow yourself to really go deep and ask yourself a very, very basic, simple question. Imagine, firstly, not ask a question, I want you to do a creative visualization. Project yourself into your future and imagine you've already achieved all your major goals. If you have to go, add one or two really amazing ones in there. Project yourself a couple of years, be it 5 years or 10 years into your future. 5 years is a good window for me. I like 5 to 7 years window frames when it comes to identity. So go imagine who you, or go imagine all your goals that you've dreamed of are all achieved somewhere in your future. Now, second thing you want to do. What kind of person would you need to be to maintain that level of success? I didn't say what kind of person do you need to be to become that or achieve it. Here's a secret. This is a critical differentiating factor. What kind of person do you need to be to maintain that level of success. So you've had all these goals and you're imagining you've achieved them all. What kind of person needs to maintain those goals, to maintain that level of success? Now, maintaining that level of success means you're going to add a lot of stack, a lot of goals on top of that. What kind of person is operating at that level? That's what you need to be able to visualize and see and realize. So, how would that person think? How would that potential future you show up, dress, communicate, interact, react, respond? Use all your senses. What will you see that's going to be different? What are you going to hear that's going to be different? What are you going to smell that's going to be different? How are you going to feel? Your posture, your movement, your hand gestures, everything about that person. What is going to be different? What are you going to notice about that person? Because here's what you need to understand, and you've got to grasp this. Your future self isn't a fantasy. That future self that you're imagining, it's not a fantasy. Yes, I know I'm doing a creative visualization, but you need to grasp the difference of what we're doing here. See, a fantasy is when I have really ridiculous dreams and I think about it for a moment, it's fleeting and it's gone, and I don't really come back to it. If you want to create a really magnificent identity, you've got to realize that that future you that can maintain all those goals and success, the understanding of how different that person is, that's not a fantasy, that's a blueprint. That's your recipe. The person you need to become already exists in your potential. Your job is to close the gap between who you are and who you're meant to be. That's our job here. So that future me, that visualization, that creates the blueprint of my journey from where I am to there. So ask yourself a couple of questions in that whole concept. Let's go firstly, values. Ask value-based questions. What does that future self value most? Belief-based questions. What does this future self believe about yourself, the world, your finances, your abilities? Ask habit-based questions. What does that future self do every single day? Standards-based questions or boundaries-based questions. What does that future self accept and not accept? Language-based questions. You can ask a huge amount of questions. What does that future self-talk say about yourself? When that future self speaks about self, what are the words going to come out of your mouth? You guys with me? Now, how do we bridge? How do we bridge? How do we bridge? How do we create a transformational plan from here to there? Well, number one, identify the gap. So what is the difference between the current and that future identity? That's the first thing you need. Go list it. Go sit down. Go take time. Go write them down. Second question around that. Once you've listed them, ask, where do I start? What's the focus? In other words, which shift will make the biggest impact? If I look at what's required, which one of these on my list is going to have the biggest impact? Third thing you want to do, what proof can I create about this new identity? So now I'm going to go through my list. I'm going to say which one's going to make the biggest impact. And then I'm going to ask, what can I do to create some form of proof about this, that I'm capable of this? So that proof, that action, that behavior you need to do, that can be very small action steps. But those are the tests required for you to know that you are creating this new identity. So what we need to understand here is we don't need to believe in that identity yet. In fact, it's probably going to be very difficult for the brain to fully embrace that future identity. But what is critical is we need us to be willing here to start experimenting, to start testing, to start acting accordingly. It's literally a willingness to experiment with it. And if we are willing to experiment with it, then we'll start to notice that identity shifts don't happen because of affirmations. Identity shifts happen because of action. Take those small action steps, notice the shift, and the identity change starts manifesting amazingly. It's small, believable actions. It's that collection, if I want to call it that, that collection of evidence that literally accumulates and I almost want to say shifts my belief system. Does it make any sense? I trust it does. So, what am I doing? If I take small actions, so I've created my list of see which one's going to bring the biggest change. I've looked at which ones can I do, what can I do now. I start experimenting with it. I start doing these small things. I start noticing that I'm getting results. My brain starts believing it's possible because I'm now getting evidence. What I'm doing is I'm starting to create what I call alignment wins. So there are behaviors and patterns and feedback loops that are being created that are aligned with my new identity. And I'm celebrating. I'm creating celebrated aligned wins. So right in the beginning, I spoke about the loop: identity, thoughts, choices, behavior, feedback, identity. So if I am getting feedback from my behavior that things are changing, I'm starting to, in my brain, deep subconscious, I'm starting to celebrate, I'm starting to identify with it, and I'm starting to create a new loop. And therein lies the secret. So what is going to happen through this? Gradually and slowly and progressively, I am going to expand my capabilities. I'm going to alter my identity, and I'm gradually going to step out of my comfort zone. That's the challenge, and that's what I want to create. I hope you guys are still with me and you're following. If you're not, this is obviously whichever platform you're watching this on, it is being recorded. You can always go back and just watch it again. So, what is now going to start happening? So first thing is you've got to become aware of the shifts that are happening. You've got to because you've got to celebrate those changes. So one of the first things you'll start noticing is a language change. Notice how differently you talk to yourself. That's absolutely one of the first things you want to do. Second things you want to really start doing is start changing how you make decisions. Don't just make a decision. Get into the habit of asking yourself, what would the future Dion do, or the future me? Don't say Dion. That's just going to be weird. That's my name. Put in your name. What would the future me do? What actions or choices or behaviors would I do? That's what I call a decision filter. You're retraining your brain to think differently to make different types of decisions. Third thing you really want to do is start redesigning your environment. Surround yourself with tangible things that support your new identity. Go buy something you can put on your desk that you really love looking at, that if you work from a desk, I've actually got something. I've got a huge watch standing on my desk that I was given by a fantastic group of people for a massive talk, and I've got it standing right in front of my eyes. I'll show it to everybody so you guys can see it. It's really magnificent to look at, and it's standing. You could see it. I could just stretch out and touch it. It's standing right in front of me on my desk because that reminds me of the identity I am embracing myself with at the moment. And surround yourself with tangible things, dress differently. And the last one, obviously, is connect with people who recognizes, who sees, and is aligned with your new identity. Put yourself in new conversational circles that justifies, confirms that identity. So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a progressive integration. It's not about trying to achieve it instantly. It's not about trying to manifest this identity in its full and perfect manner. Absolutely not. It's a progressive integration into it. It's the key behind it is the consistent movement and behaviors towards it. So every time we make a decision to act, every time we make a decision to choose, every time we think about and according to an alignment with a new identity instead of the old one, it's almost as if we're filling the bucket. We're adding more internal votes to the new identity, and we are removing some old votes from the previous identity. So we are strengthening, feeding, and growing the new identity. So it's a integration. It's not a search for perfection. It's a consistent movement towards it. And it requires an audit every 5 years, in my honest opinion. So, what are some of the things that we can do on a daily basis? Just very, very simplistic ones. I highly suggest you start your day possibly with some kind of a affirmation about your identity. Call it a morning identity affirmation, if you will. Um, Look at, as I mentioned, your identity-based decisions you make on a regular basis. Do some kind of reflection at the end of the day, and possibly once every week or every 2 weeks, go sit down literally and go do an audit and say, okay, where am I coming from? Where am I now? And what do I need to really manifest the change? So that's in a nutshell the recipe, but we are going to add a little bit more skills and tools in this talk. So hang in there. I know I've been blabbing for almost an hour. I've still got another 20 minutes left. So hang in there. What we need to understand first and foremost before we go any further is that there is going to be resistance. There's absolutely going to be internal resistance. And we need to understand where that comes from because the human brain sees any form of a change in identity as a threat to its own survival. Patterns, habits, repetitions creates a safe space, even if they're limiting us. We kind of do feel safe in that comfort zone of habit. So your subconscious mind is constantly going to want to pull you back into the old habits, into the old patterns, into the old identity. And the reason it does that, and we've got to understand this, our subconscious brain's job is not to make us happy, it is to keep us safe. And safe to our brain is familiarity. If it understands and it feels familiar, it feels great, it feels safe. So your brain is constantly going to try and take you back to that habitual, old, familiar feeling. But you've got to appreciate your new identity, your new behaviors, your new mechanism of choices. In the early phases of it might create a bit of discomfort, but once you've repeated it a few times, that becomes the new comfort zone. That's how we upgrade in life. Does it make sense? Hope so. Hope so. So, what are the things you've got to just be alert and be awake for this? So, number one, self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is going to happen, especially if you start seeing positive results. You're going to start doing things, you're going to go, I'm self-sabotaging. Forgive yourself, give yourself permission to be human, but continuously keep up with the process. That's the critical part. Second thing your brain is going to do, it's going to start manifesting a lot of thoughts about what we call imposter syndrome. It's going to say, what are you doing here? You're not good enough to do this. It's going to give you all kinds of reasons and excuses in those new situations. Just be aware of it. That's normal. In fact, when that starts to happen, start celebrating because you know you're changing, you're growing, you're becoming a better version of you. Number three, the moment there's pressure or stress, by default, you're going to want to go back immediately to the old patterns and to the old habits. So again, just have an awareness of that, and when you notice that happen, give yourself a good giggle and just make yourself aware and do it a little bit better the next time. And the last thing that could happen is in the transition, and you got to understand this one because some people really struggle with this one. In the transition from the current identity that you've been holding on to for so long into the magnificent you potential identity, at some stage, you're going to be in the middle. What does that mean? It means you're not going to be the old you, and neither you're going to be the new you. So you could have a sense of, I'm losing my identity, I don't know who I am. If you are in that transition and that happens, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a problem with it in other conditions. We're not going to talk about that now. But if you are in the upgrading process of your life, that feeling of, I don't know, I am losing my identity, you're cool. Celebrate it. You're doing, you're actually normal. You're busy with your upgrade. It's literally like if I plug in a new version of Windows into my computer now, while it is upgrading, I cannot use the old version of Windows, neither can I use the new version of Windows. I've got to wait for the installation to be complete. And in that time frame, I might feel a little bit of I'm lost. I don't know if it's going to work. It's very, very normal. So just have that awareness. All right. So how can we overcome? I want to give you guys a couple of tips how to overcome a little bit of that resistance. So things you can say to yourself or actually do. So number one, just be aware of the fact that it's normal. So if there is resistance, just smile at it and say, thank you, it's normal and it's temporary. You've got to hold on to firmly to the belief that this resistance is temporary. That's the only way you're going to break through it. If you believe the resistance is too powerful and it's permanent, guys, you're not going to go, you're going to just fall back into your old identity. So you've got to constantly tell yourself, it's normal, it's temporary, this too shall pass, and move into the better version of you. Number two, start small. Start small. Micro shifts. Small. Small shifts. I would much rather have a sequence of a huge amount of small shifts and get to where I want to go than really try these massive shifts and scare the kajibis out of myself. Small shifts. Number three, find your own way. Connect to the real you, the deeper you. Go and sit and go pray, go meditate, go become quiet, speak to whatever you need to talk to. Find your deeper purpose and connect to that. Because if we connect to our deeper purpose, that journey of identity shift into our true potential, into our real destiny becomes so much easier. It becomes more natural. It becomes exciting. We draw from our purpose to catapult us into our future. Find groups that support you in this journey, in this transition. Find people that when you talk to them about that, they go, "Yeah, I've got you. I'm supportive. I'm with you." Find people that believe in you. And the last little tip I just want to give there: patient. Be patient with yourself. I've taken one or two people through this experience, and patience is probably the one thing that most people tend to struggle with because we make the decision, we start on the journey, we start seeing results, we get excited, and we want to leapfrog to the end. We need to understand that, for me to make an identity shift, my current identity has taken 62 years to create. I'm not going to have that identity shift in 2 weeks. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take a couple of months, if not years. So be patient. Be patient. Life's a journey. Enjoy the journey. Be patient. So, will you get resistance? Yes. Resistance is not a sign that you're doing anything wrong. And I want you, you really need to understand this. It's a sign you're doing something important. You're upgrading. That resistance you're going to experience, it's a beautiful sign. Push through it. You've got this. You can. All right. So I really hope you guys are. I'm going to put it this way. I hope you guys are loving this as much as I am. So let's look at the 30-day program. I want to just break it down in weeks, and you can actually repeat these as well. So week one, do what I call an identity audit. Complete your audits. I spoke about that in the beginning. Identify that future version of you, and then choose parts of it that you want to focus on and start shifting. That's your first week. That's all you need to do in the first week. Week two, start experimenting. Daily small actions that's aligned with this new identity. And use what I call the future self decision filter. I spoke about that. Ask the question, what the future self may do. What would that version of me really do? And then get into some kind of a feedback loop or an evidence loop. Start noticing when I do this, these are the results, and this is what it's there's evidence. That is going to solidify the belief, and that's going to bring you more encouragement and courage to keep on with the process. Week three, expand your behaviors and experiment with more things that you had in your initial list. Um, Start speaking it, start telling other people about it, start putting excitement in your voice when you speak about it. Week three also it's necessary to really start looking at your environment, start rearranging some things in your environment, put things on your desk, change the colors of your walls if you have to. Really start bringing in shifts in your environment. Start dressing differently, comb your hair differently, whatever you need to do. Bring a different design in your environment to because that kind of reflects it. It's also the moment we start shifting things deliberately in our environment. It's almost like a public announcement that it's happening, and it also strengthens the beliefs inside of our minds. Week four, you want to start really solidification about the process. Start reflecting on your process, make edits, adjust your approach based on whatever you've seen happening. So look at the results and then say, okay, well, what's happening? What's working? What can I improve on? Can I do more of? And literally then start looking at um, what else can we do in our future? How else can we really, really start evolving into a greater version of me? So why do we want to do this? Well, when you master the art of what we call identity shifting, and that sounds weird, identity shifting. It's not as weird. It's actually quite simple and it's much easier. You don't just change your life. You've got to appreciate, and this is the reason I love this, and I really want to share this with you because it's already happened in my life. It's not only affecting you; it's affecting your lineage. You are not impacting just yourself. You are impacting every single person around you, everyone that you have any form of interaction with, and everybody that's going to come after you. You are shifting something in their lives. That's the beauty of it. It's not just my identity that's changing. My identity shift is bringing about a lineage change. It's a generational change. I'm changing everybody that I touch, that I come into contact with. So there's a lot of spin-off benefits from this. Your standards also automatically rise. What used to be acceptable now becomes mediocre, and you look for even better things in life. The typical daily decisions or big decisions you want to make becomes so much easier because you know where you're going, what your identity is. You've identified that, you've visualized that behavior, you've started acting on it. So types of decisions you need to now make becomes much more easier. As you progress on your journey, your new behaviors and actions become more consistent, aligned to what you are really aspiring to. So the cool thing about that is great results are inevitable. Great results are inevitable. If you upgrade your identity, your results in life is a natural reaction. It's a natural fruit. It's a natural response from it. It's inevitable. You cannot upgrade your identity and not have better results. It's just not going to happen. You will have better results. So, what's going to be great about it? And this is the biggest impact that it's had on my life. And I want to come back to this point. The biggest shift it had, my children started seeing greater possibilities that they can achieve. They started seeing high level possibilities in them. The people that my friends, my students, the people around me, they started realizing, hold on a second, I can also upgrade. It's phenomenal that ripple effect it has. Your friends really get inspired by your growth, and they get inspired to such a level that they automatically start growing without even thinking about it. It affects them and they become better versions of them. The moment you upgrade your identity, it rubs off on others. So if you're in a community and you're very active in your community, it's going to have an impact in your community. If the legacy you leave behind is vital for you, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to leave behind a better legacy. Your legacy will be transformed because of it. So the choices to me is very, very simple. You know, we can stay who we are and we can get the same results, or we can become who we need to be and we can get what we've really wanted. Um, uh, there's a book that was written a while back and it's got a scripture in it. And it says the following, it says, I put before you life and death, you choose. And to me, this concept is very much linked to that. I choose life. And life requires constant change, upgrade. If a tree is alive, it is producing a new branch, it's producing a new flower. There's growth, there's signs of change. There's signs of a metamorphosis, of an evolution, of an upgrade. Everything that's alive should be upgrading constantly. And this process to me is a sign that I'm alive because I am upgrading. So we need to understand, in essence, in this closing, I want to make a last statement. My identity is not my prison. My identity is my power. If I allow it to be my prison, it will be. But if I realize I'm the one that holds the power of my identity in my hand, then it truly becomes a power. You're not stuck with who you have been. You get to choose who you become. And who you become determines all the results and the outcomes and everything else in your life. Remember, guys, you are not who you were. In fact, I want to go so far and say, you are not even who you are now. You are who you are becoming. And if you take tonight's episode and you really apply it, you are becoming limitless. I hope you gathered something from this. I hope you enjoyed tonight's session as much as I did. I'll see you next week right here on the platform wherever you are watching. Have a beautiful day and let's all become limitless. See you the next time on the next episode of Limitless.